Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's good to see you all. So today, we have a picnic. Who's coming? That's not enough of you. Come on. We'll be there. All right. It's going to be really fun. Just hanging out. The instructions for where we will be in Sugar House Park are in the email that went out this last week. If you don't know, or if you don't have that, we'll just send it out again. I'm like, in and out, what am I? All over. I love it. So I really hope to see you. However, the fun does not have to end. This is the last sermon, but the fun does not have to end. You know when it can keep going? Next Saturday, we're going to do a cleanup. So as you guys know, Lane transitioned out as our sexton, and we're still looking for a new sexton, or trying to figure out what that situation is going to look like. In the meanwhile, we have a prairie kind of growing up over here in the garden boxes, and some stuff that's happening in the front. And so on Saturday from 8 to 10, before it gets hot, we're going to do just a cleanup, get some weeds out, bring your gloves, bring your sunscreen. I'll be here. We'll have fun. Mark is going to step up here in a minute and tell us a little bit more about what's happening this summer. But the very first one, on the 19th, next Sunday, at 10 a.m., we're going to be talking about the war in Ukraine, what's happening, what we can do now. Marjorie Castle, an associate professor from the city of Utah, you know what I mean, the University of Utah, and a member of the Ukrainian community with relatives in Kyiv will be here, as well as Patrick Poulan. Karen Baumgartner will be leading that circle. Lord. All right, we're back, we're ready. Last one, Women's Sacred Circle is hosting an art exhibit June 25th, 6 to 8 p.m. in Elliott Hall. Mark, come on up here and lead us and save me from this, whatever's happening.
Yeah, thanks, and this will be quick. It's just want to remind you, we have an excellent summer forum, 10-part series. All of them will be right here in the chapel at 10 a.m. They'll also be simulcast over Zoom and videos available on YouTube afterwards. As Ian mentioned, we have an exciting program about Ukraine. Next week, following that will be an update on the inland port. Then we'll have an update on the lawsuit about redistricting, which is ongoing. And then just one more, we'll have a program about Japanese art. And all this is available on the website, the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. Go there, look up Summer Forum, and print out. There's a one-page printout that lists all the programs. If you want to help out, you can get with Jean Mulhalko, who is handling the coffee. And then if you're a virtual viewer, and if you're on vacation, you can keep staying in touch. We need hosts for the virtual coffee hour. So get with Linda Smith. She's available through the church directory on that. Thanks everybody, all the team leaders who have put these excellent programs together. It's a great lineup, and we hope you'll all come and tell your friends and put it up on Facebook to remind everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Let's begin our worship. When you find yourself, just take a breath. Settle into these words by Katie Gelfart. Against a stark gold wall with ornate floor tiles, a curving doorway leads to the next room. We call forth the life of our faith by igniting our chalice. This spark of new beginnings invites us into a sacred space to reflect where we've been and where we're going. Even knowing that this particular flame will intentionally end with our ritual extinguishing, we fear not its end. We know with brave hearts that from every ending of our lives, we are sent forth to make a new beginning.
I'm taller than Ian. Oh, look. I'm taller than Ian and I break things. So that's his routine this morning. Lord. There we go. I got it. There are 3 musical interludes during the body of the service today. And we're not supposed to sing yet. Hopefully we get to start doing that this fall. However, they're all by Norbert Čapek, who has great relevance to this morning's service, and Monica will take up the slack with all of that. And the words are worth reading along, and they're in your hymnal. So I encourage you to read the words as I play this morning. And I'm not going to play through all 4 verses. You can read faster than I can play. But take note of them. The first one is on page 78. And then I'll call out the numbers when we get to them. But this first one, page 78, Color and Fragrance. Read along.
Today, we are overjoyed to be celebrating 2 of our graduating seniors, Nani Mitchell and Grayson Page. We recognize and honor these youths as we mark a milestone in their life. In our tradition, bridging is what we call this transitional time of finishing high school out of our youth community and more fully into the community of all ages. Grayson and Anani, will you please come up here and join me? A bridging ceremony is one of our two big Unitarian Universalist rituals that children and youth have the opportunity to participate in. The first is a baby or child dedication ceremony. This usually happens when a child is an infant, but sometimes an older child as well. In a dedication ceremony, the child's family and community enter into a covenant in which the congregation promises to cherish and love the child as part of the community. As part of that ceremony, the child is presented with a rose, representing how the community will help shelter them as they grow. And then when the youth graduate high school, we have a bridging ceremony. In the bridging ceremony, youth cross over a bridge, symbolizing their transition from childhood to young adulthood. And now, for this rite of passage, again, a rose. Oh, they're there. I was like, where did they go? Whose stems were not so carefully stripped of thorns. Through adult life, though adult life is occasionally sharply painful, as well as rich in color and texture, we urge our young adults to enter into life fully. My wish and hope for you is that you become even more fully yourself as you navigate the new waters of young adulthood. May the challenges you face be an opportunity to grow. May your gifts serve the world, and through all this, may you be blessed by knowing yourself to be whole and worthy. Would our youth advisor, Brian Gregory, and our board representatives come up here, please? Now, this morning in your pew, you found a responsive reading. It was that half sheet of paper. And you will see this responsive reading. I will lead you through it, but there will be parts that we all read. So, let's read together. Congregation, today we honor the youth among us, you who are stepping beyond, away, and toward. Today we share in your journey and encourage your discovery. Okay, all the kids and youth in the audience, our congregation today, this is your opportunity to speak. Today, so say it out loud, friends, and shout it because there's less of you today because it's summer. Today, we applaud you for all you have been, for all you are now, and for all you will be. All right, you two.
Today I cross this bridge so that I may begin anew, to hope and do and learn and be.
Today you cross this bridge. Go now and explore with wonder. We will support and nurture you. You are loved. Okay, kids, once again. Today you cross this bridge. Be patient and hopeful. We will support and nurture you. You are an inspiration.
Today I cross this bridge. I welcome your blessing and move forward in hope.
Together we share a special place. Together we learn. Together we grow. And together we serve. Now, Grayson and Nani, I will invite you to cross this bridge into our adult community at First Church. As you cross the bridge, Brian has gifts for you. And we invite you to write your name on our bridge. This bridge serves as a physical reminder to our community of the youth we have nurtured and celebrated. For our children and youth, it serves as an inspiration for things to come. For our bridging youth, it will serve as an invitation into fellowship, offering safe passage into their journey into adulthood. And Nani. Anywhere. Yeah, you get a pick, sister friend. And Grace and Paige. We bless you. We love you. May your life unfold with joy. Amen and blessed be. Oh, let's give a round for these ladies.
Hymn number 8.
In the spring of 1997 in Oklahoma City, I took a 12-year dive into the microscopic world of human cells and the forces that monetize them. Looking down the eyepiece of an Olympus scope, I perused some 50,000 cells on each of the 100 glass slides I loaded onto my stage each day. My job? Discern the unhealthy cells from the healthy and mark with a Sharpie pen worrisome areas to be evaluated later by a pathologist. As a cytotechnologist, I navigated a landscape measured in nanometers and stained in technicolor, where cancer cells were the quarry, spotted by their telltale changes from normal. Now, the trillions of healthy cells in our body, skin, bone, muscle, heart, each have special shapes arranged in orderly patterns, serving a purpose for the overall health of the body, and each being fed, aerated, cleansed, and repaired by resources from the rest of the body, Healthy cells respect their neighbors. But when you encounter a cancer cell, hackles rise on the back of your neck, and you feel a knot in the pit of your stomach. The more malignant the cell, the larger and darker the nucleus, with its excess multiples of DNA, and the more primitive the surrounding cytoplasm, devoid of functional form. The cancer cell is geared for one thing only: taking from other cells to grow itself. Under the microscope, you can actually see cancer cells engulfing and digesting neighboring healthy cells, or building vascular systems to bring more life-giving blood away from the body for themselves alone. They may also excrete metabolic byproducts that poison the rest of the body. Edward Abbey nailed it. Growth for its own sake is the ideology of the cancer cell. And I couldn't help seeing that as a metaphor for what was also happening on the macro level to our little company, which had been put together by a wealth of resources from the community to create skilled jobs there, based on a breakthrough in cancer detection at the university, low rent from a charitable foundation, and research grants from taxpayers. Our little startup was on the way. Leadership then pulled in venture capital, whose purpose was, of course, not community prosperity, but unlimited growth of its own bottom line. By 2001, the company had grown to 400 employees, attracting a buyout by a Connecticut company twice its size, who promptly laid off 100 employees. Venture money cashed out. 2 years later, the mid-sized company was taken over by one of the largest laboratory companies in the world, now boasting 70,000 employees. The megalith also bought another small company in the town and closed it down, then fired the cytotechs or moved them to Dallas. Now Next, the corporation started laying off some of our finest pathologists, including our favorite, the one who made sure that we got the ongoing training we needed. Why? I understand that she refused to follow the new time limit pathologists were given to examine each slide. 2 seconds. The giant company still keeps a branch in Oklahoma City, and maybe it gives back something to the community as well as extracting from it. I only know that the hackles rose on the back of my neck, and I felt a knot in the pit of my stomach when our little company was swallowed up twice by bigger ones. But what a contrast to be in a place like this. What warmth and elation I feel being here with all of you. Here, I am part of a healthy community where each of us offers different gifts, talents, time, or treasure to build up the whole, knowing that we in turn are nourished by our relationship within it. Here, we live out our covenant. Love shall be the spirit of the church, with service to one another and to the larger community, its greatest concern. Rabbi Saul of Tarsus, 2,000 years ago, drew a compelling image of what we're like here. Just as a body, though one has many parts, but all of its parts form one body, so we were all given one spirit to drink, so that there could be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. As we listen for our present calling amidst the cries of anguish in a world ravaged by the spiritual cancers of never enough. Could it be that beloved communities like ours embody the cure?
Thank you, Carole. It was really wonderful to work with the lay ministers this year. We'll have a new set of lay ministers next year. You really gave us so much. I really appreciate it, those who participated. Now is the time for our offertory. We'll collect an offering. And you know, I loved what Carole said, and you'll sort of hear this in an echo of what I'm saying in a few minutes, but we live in a world that have problems. Right? There's some problems out there. And, but actually, when we focus on them as the problems, we're actually missing the problem, right? The problems are the symptom. The problem is that we are not connected. We don't understand ourselves as one being. We don't recognize that we grew out of this planet and there's no other place for us to grow out of. Like this, we are of this planet. It is a forgetting, right? In Islam, sometimes they refer to sin as forgetting. It's a spiritual problem, and it requires a spiritual solution. So there's all sorts of things that can help us with our intellect, which is very helpful. But we also need places that are there to help us with our spirit, to help us with the spiritual problem. And this is one of those places. And so it's important for us to nurture and support and make room for and forward the mission of this community, which is to solve the spiritual problem of disconnection and isolation. So, we take this offertory to support that mission and to bring us into greater connection. The offertory will now be accepted. Thank you. You know, I just before I begin this, I was sort of thinking about, I just got back from New York. Woo-hoo! I know. I flew out to New York for a 1-hour ceremony yesterday and flew back last night. Yeah. I know. Song can... You feel me, right? With those long flights, yeah. And it was because the church that ordained me was closing. Yeah, they've been in existence for over 100 years, and the neighborhood had changed, and they didn't find a way to stay relevant. You know, it can happen. And so all of the ministers that were sort of still alive showed up. And it was beautiful. It was really beautiful. And you know, this month, these two sermons for Pride and for today, what Carole's been talking about, like the theme is actually the gift. And the idea is like, what are we moving towards? What are we leaving in the world? And I was really struck, to the point of wanting to share this story today, because when I got there, this woman, she was actually a woman that you heard a sermon about when we were out on the plaza. She's the woman who came up to me and she's like, God means one thing and it's wrong. I don't know if you guys remember that. But anyways, it was the same woman. And she told a story. She didn't mention me in the sermon, but I knew it was about me. Because I remember the event. She was getting fired, or it looked like she was getting fired and she was kind of panicking. And I was like, just come to church, show up 5 minutes late, leave 5 minutes early, but just come and sit in the back. And the truth is, I was doing something shady. I knew she wouldn't leave. But I just wanted to get her in the door because she was afraid to be seen. And so what happened was she did. She showed up 5 minutes late. She sat in the back. But when the service was over, she stayed. And she was crying. And people around her surrounded her and loved her because she was a member of the church. And she was telling that story 17 years later. I had completely forgotten that. Because it was just, I'd completely forgotten it. You never know the gift that you're going to give to somebody. That somehow 17 years later, that's the story they share when they're closing the church. All that to say is we have incredible power when we're interacting with one another, how we're engaging with one another, what we're saying, how we're treating one another. And this place in particular has incredible power on people. Now I left that church and I started something else called Original Blessing. And it was a very musical church, actually. We didn't have a choir, but every week we sang 6 hymns. Like, so many hymns. And we would do them in a cycle so that people really learned them. And one of my favorites was this hymn that we sort of kind of ripped off from the evangelicals and then changed the words a little bit. Not a lot, actually. But it was called Shine on Me. And it contained this line that says, I know I've got religion, and I am not ashamed. Which is not a line that you hear very often in our communities, Unitarian Universalist communities. I know I've got religion, and I am not ashamed. And part of this is because I believe that progressive religion trends towards action, right? And the belief that we can change our world, that through concerted effort, we will have an impact on our communities and they will become safer, healthier, more loving, more giving. And the key to this transformation is our commitment to one another and our commitment to doing the work. And I believe this. I really do believe this. But like all things, there's a shadow, right? A shadow that's implicit in that belief system that is not always acknowledged. And that shadow is, if we just work hard enough, if we just read the right books, if we just educate ourselves well enough, we will create the future that we envision. That the key to our salvation is our agency, that the source of our power is our potential, and that the transformation is ours to realize or to fail at. Our agency and our potential are found in our will, not in our faith. But I think that there is more richness to the experience of grace than we give it credit. The very concept of grace is that we exist within a blessing that cannot be earned, that by our efforts alone, we cannot gift it to ourselves. In certain circles, the more Calvinist bent, this definition of grace would also say unearned and undeserved. But I am I'm not moved by that. I'm not interested in that story of humanity as, sinners from birth or by nature. I do believe in sin. Right? I do believe that there are things that violate our spirit, which violate the living experience of creation, which violate the sacredness of being. But these are actions. They're not something that's inherent to us. Right? But I also believe that the divine does not impose grace on us either. Right? There's a position somewhere in the middle where the divine is a co-creator. And over the years, I've had the good fortune of listening to a simple mantra, coming through the life of a dear friend who, upon hearing the phrase, God willing, would always lean over and whisper in my ear, God is always willing. Right? God is always willing. So often when we hear something like God is, God willing, implicit is the idea that if something doesn't work out, it's not our fault. God didn't want it that way. But in the reconciliation between peoples and the reconciliation between humanity and the planet, God is always willing. It's us who are not willing. It's us who don't want the reconciliation. I am not willing. We're not ready to give up the idea that we are right and they are wrong. And we end up with a never-ending cycle of blame and separation. We're not like those people, except of course we are. We are those people. They are literally the same substance as us. They are literally the same spirit as us. But we cling to the delusion that we are not. And then we appeal to our higher power, which sometimes is just our ego, for help as we ask for our side to triumph, rather than ask for the delusion of separation to be removed. But if we want healing, right, if we want safety, if we want to experience the great love, then this is our spiritual task, to ask the divine to remove the delusion of separation. We ask for grace to appear in our lives. The creative force wants to move through us, wants to move with us. But as co-creators, we must be willing to embody this force. And we do so by making room in our lives to be transformed, by being capable into being capable of doing good. Instead of saying, I will transform my life through my agency, through my potential, we might say, please transform me so that there is more healing and forgiveness in the world. The St. Francis prayer is a gorgeous prayer, if you know it, not actually written by St. Francis. Nevertheless, it is a stunning prayer. Let me be an instrument. We have a role in the transformation of our planet. We see the compulsions all around us, compulsions that will soon make it very hard for human beings to survive on this planet. I'm sure that many of you were stunned to read that article that came out in the New York Times this last week, right? About the shrinking of the Great Salt Lake. Did you guys see that? For those who didn't, it's worth your 20 minutes. It has a fairly memorable title if you want to go search for it. It's As the Great Salt Lake Dries Up, Utah Faces an Environmental Nuclear Bomb. It's a pretty strong lead. It's worth reading. Are we going to think ourselves into the solution for the Great Salt Lake? I don't think so. I don't believe so. We actually already know the problem. Can we spiritually prepare ourselves for grace to spread through humanity, beginning with us? I believe we can, if we are willing. We are co-creators in this thing that's divine. We do have a role to play, but that role is being asked to be transformed by the divine as well. Asking for help and then taking it when it comes. The age of agency has done so much for us, but it will not solve many of our biggest problems. The healthy is not in here while the illness lies around us like a moat outside. The shrinking of the Great Salt Lake is not just a technical problem. It's a spiritual problem. And we need a spiritual solution if we want to solve a spiritual problem. And so the earlier religious era, some of which many of you actually grew up with, was defined by a relationship where God was a domineering judge. And rightly, you rejected it. The new religious era, the one that I really believe is coming, that is upon us, is one that seeks the divine partner, that can help us to do what we can't do for ourselves, the one that nurtures if we are willing to be nurtured and if we are willing to be nurturing. I cannot transform people by appealing. I cannot transform people. That's the period. I cannot transform people. And I particularly cannot do it by appealing to reason. But I can be used by a co-creative force to offer an experience with the divine. We live in a world of accusation and irresponsibility. All around us, we see people accusing one another for the suffering they feel. That's not my fault. I'm going to sue you for damages. We have prisons full of people because as a culture, we are desperate. We are desperate as a culture to find the cause for our suffering. And we are desperate to isolate that illness, and so we try it by locking the bad elements away. The only problem is we can never lock up enough people because that's not where the problem lies. The bad people. Thomas Jefferson once responded to a question when asked if he believed in luck or not. And he responded by saying, "Yes, I believe in luck. And the harder I work, the more luck I have." Do I believe in grace? Yes. And the harder I work to invite the Spirit into my life, the more it will extend me grace, the more it will invite me into communion with life. And it begins by addressing my judgments. Judgments block the experience of grace in my life. Do I want to experience forgiveness? Do I want to work on then I work on the practice of empathy. Not with any particular relationship, but everywhere. Do I want to experience self-love? Loving myself? Right? Has anybody heard of a more difficult thing to do? It's hard. Well, then I practice empathy and love with you. Then it comes back to me. Do I want to see tolerance and justice? Then I practice empathy. And I ask the divine for help. Because I'm not always sure that my solutions are the best ones. Desmond Tutu used to say, each of us is a God carrier. And I've been sort of holding on to this phrase because I love it, especially in this time of COVID, where like infection is everywhere, right? And because the way he sets it up, it sounds like God is infectious, right? Everyone is a God carrier. Like you've got some sort of illness that's called God. And maybe God is infectious. the judgment one. Well, maybe that is too, but hopefully that's not the infection we're passing along. Perhaps when we experience communion with the divine, when we have that powerful experience of oneness, when separation drops and we really encounter creation, when we know that all of life comes from the same source, the spiritual solution spreads from one person to the next because we have seen the future that might be. And we share that story with other people because we have been infected with hope. You are a God carrier. You did not find your way to this church because we are famous or because we have a lot of celebrities. You did not become a Unitarian Universalist because it will get you a partner or it will make you wealthy. You did not come this morning because you're supposed to be here and there's someone watching to make sure that you're in your pew. You're here because you've been infected by someone or something who told you this story about interdependence, the story of interwovenness, the story of communion with the divine, of oneness, and that our mission is to be responsible for what that means, what it means to really live in interdependence. And it includes all of the responsibilities, not just the easy ones. And maybe you like the fact that you were infected, and maybe you don't like it. You know, there are days when I really don't like it. There are days I wish I could do anything but ministry. True story. True story. Maybe not you. You're true story. I wish some days I could just go make money. I'm like, I'm a smart guy. I could just go make money. And I'd like money. And then there are other days where I'm like, I just want to lock myself in a studio and just make art and not talk to anybody. Leave all these relationships behind because they're pain. It's a pain to be in relationships sometimes. But I am a God carrier. Like, I have been infected with the idea that the future is possible, where we live in an interconnected way. That we live in such a way that nurtures one another and the planet. I've been infected by this idea, by this, whatever it is. And I have a responsibility which does not allow me to just go make money. So we're about to take a break from the sermons for the summer, which is kind of funny. I'm putting here, preacher hat, interim hat. That's not a great way to run a church, FYI. It's the culture that we have, right? So this is my last sermon until September. But that doesn't mean that our sacred responsibilities disappear or take a break over the summer. You know, I was telling a Catholic friend, she was like, you take a break over the summer? And I was like, haha, God trusts us. Which she was just like, It doesn't mean that our sacred responsibilities disappear as we take this break from sermons, right? The lake is still drying out. Our democracy is still being threatened. Capital is still pooling in the offshore accounts of the oligarchs. And these are not the problems. They are the symptom of the problem. And the problem is that we have forgotten, or we willfully deny, that we are interconnected. And that there is a good and a bad, and we are the good, we are the righteous, we are the clean, and the sinners are out there. The image of God as the judge exists because we judge. So my invitation to you, I just watched Mission Impossible. My invitation to you, should you choose to accept it, I did just watch it on the flight. My invitation is not to take the summer off, but to take the summer on, right? As a form of self-study where you are both minister and messenger of the new religion, the one that nurtures, the one that seeks healing, the one that seeks companionship, the one that seeks the holy impingement of responsibility as co-creator. And that's what I'll be doing this summer. To be impinged upon by the responsibility of sharing the story that interdependence is possible. That's because I'm a God carrier. I've been infected. And I think that you are a God carrier. I know I've got religion. And I am not ashamed. And I hope you join me there.
This microphone got to get to my level. All right. As Ian said, today is the last Sunday of our regular church year. And as we close our service today, we celebrate an old Unitarian tradition from Europe called the Flower Communion. It was first celebrated by Unitarian minister Norbert Čapek on June 4th, 1923. Reverend Dr. Čapek was the founding minister of the Unitarian Church in Prague, and as he struggled to hold the highest values of our faith with his congregation in a time of extreme duress, he created this beautiful ceremony of fellowship and unity. It was brought to the United States by his wife, the Unitarian minister, the Reverend Maher Čapek. And today, congregations all over the world will join in celebrating the Flower Communion in the spring or early summer. The only biography of Norbert Čapek, at least the only biography in English, was written by our predecessor here in this pulpit, the Reverend Richard Henry. I'd like to share with you some words from that biography that help explain the purpose and meaning of the Flower Communion from the correspondence of Reverend Dr. Čapek. Here he writes about the first Flower Communion, which was celebrated on the first anniversary of the founding of his congregation in Prague, at a time when the little church was working to establish its identity as a community of freethinkers gathering together under the growing shadows of war. We are trying to find new expressions of our religious life very slowly and carefully. Whereas the dedication of a child, weddings, and burials were kept rather close to the Unitarian custom, we have made a new experiment in symbolizing our liberty and brotherhood in a service which was so powerful and impressive that I never experienced anything like it. The most dry and rationalistic members were moved, and many an eye brightened with tears. On that very Sunday, it was the last before the holy days, everybody was supposed to bring with them a flower. In the middle of the big hall was a suitable table with a big vase where everybody puts their flower, some lady members helping to do it nicely. Right? The sight of the many beautiful flowers was wonderful, and more of them were coming, solemnly, yet joyfully, with full understanding of the meaning. We had a common song. I read 1 Corinthians 13, and in my sermon, I put emphasis on the individual character of each member flower, on our liberty as a foundation of our fellowship. Then I emphasized our common cause, our belonging together as one spiritual community. The vase is a symbol for us. For us in our Unitarian brotherhood, the vase is our church organization. We need it to help us share the beauties, but also the responsibilities of communal life. In the proper community, by giving the best that is in us for the common good, we grow up and are able to do what no single person is able to do. Each of us needs to receive in order to grow up. But each of us needs to give something away for the same reason. And when they go home, each is to take one flower just as it comes, without making any distinction where it came from and whom it represents. To confess that we accept each other as siblings without regard to class, race, or other distinction, acknowledging everybody as our friend who is a human and wants to be good. After all these experiences, nobody dares to say anymore that we are so rationalistic as to have nothing for the heart. The congregation in Prague that initiated the flower ceremony with the Čapeks was at one time the largest Unitarian church in the world, with over 3,000 members. Yet they met with dark times in those early decades of the 20th century. Norbert and Maya were invited to immigrate to the United States as World War II broke out. Maya did come to the US to serve our congregation in New Bedford, Massachusetts. But Norbert stayed behind in Eastern Europe to serve the Unitarians in Prague. He was arrested by the Gestapo in 1941 and was executed at the concentration camp at Dachau the following year. And so, the flower ceremony is also a memorial to the Čapeks, to Norbert, a Unitarian martyr, and to Maya, who continued the ministry they shared and upheld the tradition that they created through her own career. It is a tribute to the importance of cultivating joy even in the darkest of times. And it is a rededication to the local church as a source of community and inspiration for all. I'd like to invite our helpers to bring forward the baskets of flowers. And as you pass through the congregation one last time, just check and see if there's any flowers that folks brought that didn't make it to the baskets. Y'all can just pass those down toward the aisle, and we'll collect them on the way. As most of you entered the worship space today, if you brought a flower, you placed it in our collective baskets. We're not doing vases today. Baskets are easier to carry. I have to wonder if they continued to do vases when Norbert and Maya's congregation was 3,000 people. Woo, that's a lot. Now, each of you will be given a different flower to take home with you. May it serve to you as a reminder of the beauty in our diversity and of what we are capable when we work together for a common good.
Norbert's third hymn is number 28.
too. And David. Thank you, friends. When the Čapeks celebrated the flower communion, they would bless the flowers with this prayer. Let it be our benediction on this last Sunday of the church year. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and of gifts, to be one in desire and affection, and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship, but may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in the world. Amen. Thank you, David. Thank you for playing all the Čapek's hymns. They're some of my favorites. Thank you all for being here. 12:30, right? Yeah. Yes, thank you. 12:30 is the time. Sugar House Park is the place. We would really love to see you there. Thanks for being here today.